So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. As I said before, Tim Schmidt is the first returning speaker at the Good Leadership Breakfast. We're excited about that. And he has with him his handsome son, Jonathan. Tim is one of the pace-setting executives at Thrivent. Thrivent's a wonderful organization headquartered here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, that shares the same values we do. They're in the financial services industry. Tim and I met on the board of directors at Lutheran Social Service. And it was a remarkable experience. We had instant chemistry around philanthropy and values and entrepreneurship and parenting. And then as our son, Ben, went to Gustavus, one of the things he did was to go to India for a study abroad for a semester with Jonathan Schmidt. So we watched Jonathan grow up. He was an awesome wakeboarder. He was a great basketball player. He's a rock and roll drummer. I don't know if he's going to talk about this tonight, or a gospel drummer, right? And he's quite the entrepreneur. He bought his first business while he was in college. It's called Mocha Monkey. I think there's a little business card for Mocha Monkey on the table. It's a really cool wine and coffee shop out in Waconia. And then at the age of 25, he bought his second one. And the only way you can do that is to have an infrastructure in your family and friends that allow you to thrive at such a young age. So I could not be more delighted today to introduce you to our speakers, our first father and son team, Tim and Jonathan Schmidt. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, have fun.
Well, congratulations, Paul. I mean, we spoke here a lot of years ago to a group of 40. I don't even think we needed microphones at that time. And so to be able to see such a successful group of executives and entrepreneurs and spouses and kids to be able to be a part of this today is a pleasure for us. It's actually a little bit humbling. Well, there's three journeys that we want to take you on today in about 20 minutes. The first journey is all about what in the world were you thinking when you climbed this Mount Rainier. 5 people died in 2010 on Mount Rainier, the same year that John and I did it. And you all heard just a couple months ago, 7 more died. Tragic. So that's the first journey we want to spend some time on with you. Secondly, we'd like to have you understand what in the world,
how we made it up.
How we made it to the top. Yeah, thank you.
We're going to share that story.
John carried me, actually. And then thirdly, there were some key life lessons that came to us as a result of this. And we thought, what were the nuggets that we took away from a climb like this? And so bear with us. In 2010, Paul and I were in the middle of researching for this book. We had 1,500 surveys come back to us touching every continent. Then we began to interview 40 leaders who scored a 9 or a 10 in one of the 7 Fs. And so what would a psychologist from Sacramento say about his 10 in fun? What would a bank CEO say who scored a 10 in fitness? And those are all in the book. So all we wanted to do was help people along this journey that Paul talked earlier about as moving up the scale, of improving our lives of goodness, living grateful lives, so that the wheel that you just scored in front of you actually starts to grow and improve. Thrivent, ironically, is right in the middle of some really interesting research. And the research is talking about how do we move people on the finances F from struggling to stable, to secure, to surplus, so that we live lives of generosity when we make good decisions and we make good choices along the way. And isn't that true about fitness as well? We could say if we make good choices and good decisions that we can live more lives of fitness, which, by the way, our global feedback said that's the lowest score across the world that people struggle with, is fitness. At our book launch, ironically, we asked the crowd on one of those remote controls, we said, and what could you coach people on the best? They said fitness too. So we say we suck at it, but we could coach others, right? And so that combined with the fact that John was graduating from Gustavus very shortly, I felt I had a window of time to begin to think about my own 7 Fs and my own sub 5 scores, and the combination of wanting to do something really cool with Jon.
So the reason that I wanted to climb Mount Rainier was really because my dad came to me and said, "Do you want to climb Mount Rainier with me?" I said, "Heck yeah, I do." And also I was a little worried about him doing it by himself. I think I had to get him up and down. But for me, it starts a little bit earlier. As Paul talked about, I went to India and spent 4 months there. Had a fantastic trip, completely changed my perspective on everything I was doing. I got back and I took a ceramics class, a pottery class, which might have seemed kind of out of sorts, but maybe you saw some of the bowls out there. Those are all bowls that I have made recently. And I was a business management and entrepreneurship major. So I had these 3 things going on, and how do they fit together? And I walked in this coffee shop, Mocha Monkey, and everything just kind of collided, and it was like, this is what I need to do. So I actually took over, bought that business at the end of 2010, the beginning of 2011, and still had a semester left of school. So I went to my professors at Gustavus, one who is here right now actually, and said, you know, I'm doing what I think you want me to do, right? I'm going into my own business. Can you help me out a little bit? So I only had to spend 1 day a week at Gustavus. The rest of the time I was focusing on running the business. Since then, we opened our second location just 6 months ago, and then 3 months ago, we're on WCCO. We got voted the #1 coffee house in Minnesota. It was awesome. Yes! So you all have a $1 off coupon, so there's no excuse to come visit either location in Waconia now. Going back a little bit, Mount Rainier was right in the middle of, I had just decided to buy Mocha Monkey. So my dad said, we're going on this trip, and I had this huge life transition that was in front of me. So for me, it was just great timing to reflect on how my life was taking shape after Gustavus and after school.
So we decided, we have a cliche in our household. You might take this one up too. We call it throw your hat over the fence. It's a metaphor that if you don't know your neighbor, go into your backyard, throw your hat over the fence so that you're forced to then go knock on their door and say, "Hi, I'm your next door neighbor. My hat blew over the fence." Right? So what do? We sent the money. We threw our hat over the fence. We did something that committed us to follow through, because discipline is a major issue in the 7 Fs. So we sent our money to the guiding company, Alpine Ascents in Washington State, and 6 months ahead of the actual climb, and we were fully committed. There was nothing on the calendar that was going to change. We had to get our bodies in shape for this amazing climb.
So Mount Rainier, how many people have seen Mount Rainier in Washington? Quite a few people. Everyone knows it's very iconic in Washington. People just call it the mountain. And so it's 14,411 feet. Between 10 and 13,000 people attempt to climb it every year. Only about half get to the summit. So the year that we did it, 10,000 people attempted and 5,000 made it to the summit. The 2 reasons that people don't are because of fitness. Their fitness isn't where it should be, or it's not good enough. And weather was the other thing, which we ran into a lot of weather, which prevents many people from making the ascent. Over 65 deaths have happened on the mountain since 1981. And it was just a great trip for us.
So the preparation for us was the Thursday prior to our climb. The guides had us lay out all of our equipment. You know, and I'm bringing like a Thrivent windbreaker, right? It's like, come on, this isn't going to work. And as they went through all of our equipment, right down the line said, that's not going to work, that's not going to work, that's not going to work. You are going to be in death-defying situations. You need to rent this 30 below jacket from us. And so they got us equipped so that we had the highest odds of making it to the very top. In that room was a man named Dr. Morey. Dr. Morey was one of the climbers that came from Anchorage, Alaska. Very successful doctor, but this doctor had really let himself go. So speaking of fitness, he had specialized in nutrition. He also had played for a minor league baseball team decades ago. But he said, I'm going to climb Mount Rainier. I'm going to lose 1 pound per week for the 52 weeks leading up to this summit. And that's exactly what he did. And we celebrated with Maury on the summit of Mount Rainier.
So day 1, The whole trip was a 3-day climb. We spent one night at 10,000 feet. We went another 1,000 feet the second day, and then we went all the way up to the summit the last day. From 2 a.m. till 8 a.m. is when we climbed, and then we came all the way back down what we'd done the previous 3 days. That's just a brief overview of the climb. Day 1, we started on a dirt gravel trail at 5,000 feet, at Camp Paradise it was called. We started hiking up. Our packs were about 60 pounds. I have a picture of me with my pack, and my pack is bigger than my upper body, much bigger. We quickly transitioned into double insulated boots with crampons and spikes on the bottom because the remainder of the trip would be on snow or glacier. The last thing on day 1 that I remember was we were in these clouds the whole time. We were hiking through these clouds. You couldn't see anything, not the picturesque mountain climbing that you would imagine. And we began to emerge out of the clouds, and we turned around, and there was literally nothing but clouds and one mountain peak in the distance, which was Mount Hood off in Oregon. It was a picturesque view, one of the best we had, because we would later climb back into the clouds, and when we faced all the weather and wind and snow that we did up on the summit.
Day 2 was all about training in the morning. We had no expertise in equipment, and so they showed us how to use these ice picks. And these ice picks became our lifeline to one another. What they taught us is we need to learn how to self-arrest, because we're climbing on glacier. If you stumble and fall, you will go screaming down the side of the mountain. There's nothing to stop you. And so what they would teach us that morning was that you jam the pick into the glacier with your pick, and then both of your crampons on the bottom of your feet had spikes coming out the front, so you would have a 3-point stop to one another. The second piece that they taught us was how important it was who our ropes were attached to. That we would be attached about 30 feet apart throughout that second day and throughout summit day, so that if either of us, and there were 5 of us in this string, that if anybody would slip and fall, the other 4 would take that pick and do that self-arrest and to stop and save that person. The other thing that we learned that day was when the going got tough, when we had to climb up a rock face, the guides would stop us and tie us up closer together. That was a key learning for us to think about. When the going got tough, we needed to get closer to people, closer to the people that we're attached to. So that was on day 2, where the whole morning they had us falling down a planned fall, and then they would throw the pick to us as we were falling so that we could right our bodies and practice this. And they would have us run around and do it again, run around and do it again, so that we were prepared for ultimately summit day. We advanced another 2,000 feet that day. The tents were set up already on the side of a glacier. And that second day, they also taught us about the crevasse. The fact that we had these 500-foot deep cracks in the glacier that we had to get over. We talked about these crevasses a lot because you see pictures of these rickety ladders that are over top of these crevasses. We had no ladders. We had to get a running start and jump over these crevasses. So the 5 of us on this string would approach this crevasse and go, "Are you kidding me?" But the direction was our team had to spread out ahead of us so that the lines were taut, so that in case I jumped over and caught one of my crampons on my snow pants and fell, my whole team was ready to self-arrest and stop me from falling. One of the deaths in 2010 is exactly that. The 4 teammates had crossed over the crevasse and were standing on the edge. The 5th guy came over, stumbled, fell down the crevasse, and pulled the other 4 with him. We were happy to have guides that we were attached to that had done a great job. The last thing on day 2 I'll never forget. It was after dinner, 12 of us crowded into this tent, and the guide said, "We need to talk about summit day. We need you to listen to us. This is going to be the most dangerous day that you're going to have. When we say we're going to take a break, you sit down on your pack, you eat 300 calories, you drink this much water, because you're going to be burning 5,000 calories as we had been every day on this climb." So that was the end of day 2.
Day 3 was summit day. the guides came around and woke us up at 2 in the morning. They said, we're not going to tell you when you're going to wake you up because you won't sleep. So we're going to wake you up when we wake you up. They woke us up at 2 in the morning. We gathered our things. We had our headlamps. It was pitch black out. All we had was our 10-inch little trail in front of us and our light that lit. We were connected to each other. One side of you was just complete blackness all the way off down. It was total. The incline was so steep you would reach up on the other side and actually be able to touch the glacier up here. That's how much of an incline it was when we first started. The first break that we took, one of our team members was having lung issues and his head was pounding and he had to turn around. The one guide went back with him. And after this, I mean, it's pitch black, we're in a cloud, we can't see anything, and it's just a grind the whole time. My dad really struggled at this time.
Thanks for sharing that, John. Hour upon hour was an extraordinarily steep climb at this point. We were going from 12,000 to 14,400, which was the summit. And they taught us to either climb like a duck with your feet way out because it was so steep, or climb foot over foot this way. And for me, the air was so thin at this point, and I was exerting so much energy that for me, I was having to take a breath with every step in order to have enough oxygen to keep going as we were approaching the summit.
So after hour upon hour of this grind, it's like I just keep thinking to myself, like, when are we there? It's gotta be soon. We got to, the guide said, you made it. You made it to the false summit, is what they said. So we looked around and said, the false summit? And they said, yep, and the wind is just whipping, the snow is like, it would just get caught in my beard. I'd have icicles coming from my beard. And they said, the true summit is another 45 minutes up that way.
But you can tell everybody you made it if you stay here.
Yeah. So we said, all right, we did not come all this way, all this preparation, just to stop at the false summit. So we pushed and ground another 45 minutes to get to the top, and we finally made it. We made it to the summit. It was windy. And you could not see anything. It was not the top of the world mountain experience that you would have pictured. We were up there for a few minutes and took a few pictures, and the guide said, you're not done. You have to go all the way back down what you've done the last 3 days. So what we had been climbing up for the last 3 days, we had to go all the way back down. So we quickly gathered ourselves, probably not as much energy left in our tanks as we should have had to go all the way back down. But we got down to the bottom, got to the parking lot, went to a restaurant on the way out, and had about the best burger and beer we'll ever have, and reflected on the trip after that.
After no showers or anything else. So the third journey we wanted to share before we move to table talk is what were the business and life lessons that came out of this for John and me. As a father-son team, only 4 of us climbers made it to the true summit, where it said 14,400 on the placard at the top. The first life lesson that we wanted to share, and we have been so blessed. Michelle Bachman, actually, we can thank her because she pulled out of an event. They called John and I with 2 weeks' notice and said, would you come and tell your story? So Michelle was the one who helped really launch what we would call kind of our social business. We're both busy business people, but we love speaking and sharing our story and giving our fees back to charity. And so the first life lesson that came out of this experience for us was really to identify what are your crevasses? What are your obstacles? And if you think about it, the obstacles that we face in our families and in our businesses are actually the raw material to make our goals come true. So think about that for a second. If I suggested, and it would be fun if half of you did this, if you went home today and shared with your loved one or your spouse, honey, I've decided we're going to spend 3 months in Italy next year. What are the first 5 things that they're going to say? You're crazy? How are you going to pay for it? What's going to happen to your job? Who's going to mow the yard? Who's going to take care of the kids and the dog? But you know what? Thank you. So you're telling me if I solve those 5 things, we can go? So I just have to talk to my boss about a sabbatical. I just have to talk to our neighbor boy about mowing. right? I just have to talk about what's in my 401k. We're going to take 40 grand out. We're just going to do this. So the obstacles for you as business leaders and parents are the actual raw material to make the goal happen. And so we wanted to give that, one of the 5 things that we came away with this climb, we call them the 5 killer life lessons from the summit of Mount Rainier. That's one of them, is know your obstacles and treat those as the raw material.
Another great example of someone who wakes up every single day with a huge crevasse in front of him is a guy named Eric Weinmeier. If you've heard of Eric Weinmeier, he has summited Mount Everest, and he was born with complete blindness. He has since summited the highest peak in every continent. So talk about a guy that gets over a giant crevasse every time he does something and still is accomplishing these amazing goals. Eric actually grew up in Hong Kong, as did my dad and my grandpa, and my aunt as well, who is here. My grandpa was a teacher there. He taught Eric in PE in 5th grade. So you think about teaching a blind kid in PE. What do you do? What do you do with that? So he went to his mom and said, you know, I have Eric in my class. He's blind. We're going to be playing all these different sports. Like, how do you want me to do that? And his mom said, you stick him in there like everybody else. You don't treat him any differently. My grandpa said, but we're playing dodgeball. He's going to get hit in the face. And she said, I don't care. He needs to learn how the world is going to treat him. And the other kids in that class need to learn how to treat someone with a disability like that. So all the way back, you can trace how he's able to accomplish those amazing things back to the parenting, back to how his mom approached his disability. And look at what he's doing now. It makes me think, you know, what in my life is this crevasse that I can't get over? I have sight, I have my legs. It's just an amazing story.
So that's the first life lesson that came out of this. The second one, and that's all we're going to have time to share today, is the idea of whose ropes are you attached to. Another cliche we use around our house a lot is your life is shaped by the people you spend time with and the books that you read. Not much else. Another way to frame that I heard recently is you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So who is it that I'm surrounding myself with that helps me improve on my 7F journey as I move up and try to improve my goodness and impact on the world? It comes down to who is it that I'm attaching my rope to.
One of our guides on Mount Rainier his name was Lakpa, and he was a Nepalese Sherpa. He was born in Nepal. He has been to the summit of Mount Everest 14 times, and he guided us on Mount Rainier. He was in the Guinness Book of World Records for the speed record between base camp and summit. So talk about a guy you want to attach your rope to on a trip that we've never done mountain climbing before. This is a guy you want. So it makes you think, who in your life can you attach your ropes to that's going to be able to get you to the top of that mountain? We spoke to a group, a $100 million organization, and the CEO emailed us after and said, we have a great picture of me with Lakpa at the end. And she said, can you send me that picture? I'm going to put it on my desktop so that every day I'm reminded that I am like Lakpa is. I'm like Lakpa for my organization. I thought it was such a great idea. I did the same thing. You know, I have 35 employees now, and I'm like that guide. I need to be the one that's been there before, that has the experience, that gets us to the top of the mountain.
2 quick stories, and we'll wrap up the key life lessons from this experience. In the book, as Paul and I were doing research, we ran across so many great stories, because what we didn't want was another book that just talked about how businesses get better. You think about Built to Last is a phenomenal book. In fact, that was a gift Paul gave me probably 18 years ago. But we got to build these bodies that are built to last. This is the economic engine right here. This is the conscious capitalist right here, not the business. I want to be good to great. So as we interviewed people and put those life real stories inside of this book, one of my favorite stories was 3 guys that had fitness score very low. And they wanted to work out. They wanted to increase the discipline in their lives to work out every day. So they would go to the gym together, and after their workouts, they would take each other's shoes home. So the next morning, when the alarm clock went off, I gotta go work out. I got John's shoes. Right? So all of a sudden, a simple disciplinary way to think about how am I going to work out, how am I going to have someone hold me accountable, simply by taking each other's shoes home. They did not hit the snooze button, by the way, and they showed up right on time so that each other could work out as a group. They blended friends, they blended fun, they blended fitness, and they blended a healthier future by that one simple little idea. The second story, and we'll conclude with this, is probably my favorite. It's in the intro to the book. It's also in the family chapter. I was flying from Portland, Oregon to San Francisco, boarded a plane, 21A, way in the back, small plane, and I sat next to a gentleman from Asia. And having lived in Hong Kong 11 years, I said, "Where's home?" And he said, through kind of broken English, he was a little bit shy, he said, "Seoul, South Korea." I said, "Wow, what brings you to San Francisco?" And he said, "Well, actually, I'm attending 3 medical conferences." And as I dug a little bit deeper, he said, "Well, I'm actually the featured speaker at all 3 medical conferences." And what I learned was that he was a world-renowned retina surgeon. Harvard has hired him to write 3 textbooks. And I said, "You know, Paul and I are in the middle of starting the research for this book. Would you mind if I ask you a couple questions? On a scale of 1 to 10, where's your faith right now?" And he told me, "Where's your family score? Where's your fitness? Where's your finances? Where's your friends, fun, and future?" Well, you might guess, make a long story longer, his finances and his future were rock solid. His family, his fitness, his fun were sub 5 on your wheel. And I said, "Dude, you've got to fix this." I said, never married, 43 years old. And I said, "Are there any good-looking profs, like, on campus?" Because he also was a professor at the University of Seoul, South Korea. And his eyebrows kind of went up. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Look, you got to blend the F's and change this. Invite her to lunch and walk to a restaurant that's a mile away. Now you got fitness, you got friends, you got fun, you got future, and maybe a family, right?" And so as we were unloading our bags out of the overhead compartment, I said, "Dr. Jon, you've got to have someone hold you accountable or this isn't going to ever stop. You've got to attach your rope to somebody." And he said, "Would you?" So for a year, we had a mentor-mentee relationship between Seoul, South Korea and Chaska, Minnesota. And in the 11th month, he sent me a picture. I opened it up, and it was him with this professor from Seoul, South Korea. This attractive professor that he'd had his eye on. And so our message today is really about helping you move up your journey on the 7 F's, and to think about identifying your crevasses, and to think about who is it. If your life really is shaped by the books that you read and the people that you spend time with, our encouragement is that you take action and do that. Paul?
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, John. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Well done. As I threatened earlier, now it's time for you to talk to each other. We're all climbing one sort of mountain or another. The discussion question is, who are you tied to as you're climbing that mountain? Because nothing significant ever happens alone, right? So have a conversation at your table, please, about the people that you're tied to on the mountain that you're climbing. Ready, set, go. So I really enjoy the chance to interview our speakers on your behalf. And first thing I'd like to do is to talk with you a little bit, John. So within the last year and a half, you've bought a second business, gotten married, and moved your life. Where in the world do you have any time for any fun? What are you doing for fun?
Well, in the words of the last speaker, Chad, I drink a lot of beer.
Yeah, that's right.
But in all seriousness, I mean, I do, but I like to I love going out on the lake in Waconia. Lake Waconia has an awesome lake. We have a boat out there, and I love wakeboarding and going that. I built a climbing wall on my house, so I like to climb. I love to stay active. I did a triathlon this summer for the first time ever. So I pretty much just anything that captures my mind.
Good. Well, tell us a little bit more about Mocha Monkey and maybe what you're doing. What's the vision for this organization?
Yeah, you know, people always ask me what the vision is, and everyone seems like they got their 5-year plan, and you would think maybe that I have some maybe that I have 10 locations in 10 years, but when this second location opportunity came about, it was like I really went back and forth probably 10 times about whether I was going to do it. I knew it would work. I knew it was a great opportunity, but do I really want that? And so I really don't have this grand master plan. We want to be the best coffee house we can be with the highest quality products, with the best customer experience, and that's really our focus. Everything else, the opportunities that come from the outside, I'm going to take them one at a time and see where they go.
Hey, that's okay. That's definitely okay. Tim, when you and I first worked on the 7Fs, and we were sitting out on the patio at your house, and we were scoring ourselves on 7Fs for the first time. Do you remember what number you and I both had on Friends?
I think it was a 3.
We both had 3s.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. What have you been doing to get that score up?
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
That's what I do, pal.
I think men struggle with this one personally. Women far better at socialization with one another, and I think men struggle with this one. And I'm still struggling with this one. One of the things that Jeanette and I do, and it probably drives her nuts, but sometimes when we have a date night, I'll actually take the 7Fs along with me. Sorry. And you know what? Can I finish? Can I finish? And one of the reasons is for us to think about who our ropes are attached to. What friends do we want to deepen, and where we love him and love her, right? Versus she's a little weird and he's awesome, or the other way, right? You have that same experience. And so I think for us, we really try to be deliberate because our lives are so full. We don't have a lot of time. And when we want to spend time, who is it that we want to attach our ropes to that make us better, that are nutritious, that are the five people that we become the average of?
Seems to me there's about 235 people in the room that are going to hold you accountable to getting your score up higher on Friends.
You know what? I think what gets scheduled gets done.
Yep.
We need to plug in, calendar time to do that.
Another one for you. Where's your faith alive in your work?
Well, I'm blessed. Thrivent is a membership organization of Christians, right? And if we help enough people be wise with money, we inspire them to live generously. And that's how we change the world. And so for me, every day I go to work, I make sure that my leadership team is engaged in devotion before we get started. We ask God to be a part of it, and that's just really important to us. Good,
thank you. My son's here in the room. Can you tell us one more story about something that's really shaped the friendship that you two share?
From when I was a little kid, my dad's been trying to teach me lessons and build my character and all that stuff that dads do. So there's one story I remember back when I was in 6th grade or so. I really wanted a mini fridge in my room.
That's where the beer drinking came from.
Why is there laughter? That's not a joke. I wanted a mini fridge in my room. All my friends had one. I think one of my friends had one. So I'm sure my dad immediately thought, oh, there's an opportunity to create something. He wants something that's not going to cost me anything. I have a mini fridge in my garage. So he said, let's go to Best Buy, figure out how much it costs per year. So it costs like $3 a month in energy. So my dad said, if you read a book of my choice every month, I'll pay for the energy for that fridge and stock it too. So I got my Gatorade and whatever else I wanted. No beer yet.
Yeah.
And so I did. I remember reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I remember reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, just some classic books that many people have read and are sure influenced their lives and still influence my life to this day.
And then he got a moving traffic violation in college, car full of his friends. And he came and said, Dad, this is a $140 ticket. I don't want to have to pay for that. I said, I'll pay for half if you read The Millionaire Next Door and pass a test. And you gobbled that book up and passed the test right away. So I paid half of his speeding ticket, just as another way to help get the book side of how we want to influence a young mind.
Outstanding. Well, one last question. The book that we wrote together was your first book project, right? So now you're reflecting on it for almost 5 years. What did you learn from the process of writing the What Really Works book?
Yeah. It was such a huge project because we both had day jobs to do all this research. But I think there's 3 things that I really can put my mind around that we learn from speaking to all these amazing executives and entrepreneurs. And I call them the ABCs. First of all, accountability. If I'm going to set these goals like we did with Jon to contact this woman, and by the way, the picture that he sent me was their wedding picture. Okay, I think I messed that up during the break. They said, you just said it was a picture, but it was their wedding day. And so accountability is really key, that every 30 days, I need someone asking me, what's your personal life all about, scale of 1 to 10? Where's your business on a scale of 1 to 10? Number 2 is this concept of blending. And that is all about, can I get as many F's into one activity as I can? So when we looked at this Mount Rainier climb, you think about how many F's: faith to enjoy the creation God gave us, family with John and me, finances were actually going the other way on a trip like this, finances or fitness, and then friends. We had a couple friends from Texas, executive friends that came with us, fun and future. We hit nearly all of them. And then the C is all about calendaring. What gets scheduled gets done. If you're going to run a half marathon in 90 days, put the workouts as appointments with yourself, because the odds of it happening go way up. So what gets scheduled gets done was the third C.
Outstanding. Thank you.